Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we're going to be talking about Elon Musk's latest shenanigans and how that relates to somebody who I've noticed a parallel with, the YouTuber PewDiePie, the biggest YouTuber maybe ever. I think he's got the most subscribers still of any solo creator. Anyway, we're going to be looking back at the last several years of PewDiePie's development, and maybe we can notice some patterns and try to predict the fate of Elon Musk. Please leave a like, make sure you're subscribed, and hit that join button, plus super chat any questions, concerns, or support you want to voice. Okay, so we know Elon Musk announced he's going to buy Twitter. It's unclear to me if that sale is completely final, if it's happening or not, but obviously it's very big, not only because a private citizen decided to buy Twitter, but also because that is, by the way, an individual rather than a corporation, but also because he also tweeted out the reason, also because he said he wants to like unban Trump possibly, or just generally the reason he wanted to acquire Twitter was to promote free speech. And that's controversial because, yeah, it's easy to say free speech, but what are you going to do when you're actually faced with certain movements, certain language, certain things that a lot of people don't want to be around and they don't want to associate with, or they consider to be actual threatening speech and movements? Then you've got a tough decision to make, both financially, legally, morally, and all of that. So obviously it was controversial when Elon announced he's going to acquire Twitter in order to promote free speech. Also, he recently, in the last couple months, Elon tweeted out, he said, "I've always voted Democrat, but now that the Democrats have become the party of hate, I'm going to vote Republican." And I think he endorsed Ron DeSantis from Florida. He at least suggested he thought DeSantis would make a good president. Controversial. And let's look back at the development of PewDiePie. Now, PewDiePie bears some similarity to Elon Musk. Both of them are sort of at the top in their domain. So Elon Musk being like the richest man in the world, I believe, and PewDiePie, the biggest YouTuber in the world. Certainly he was in 2016 and 17, around that time, and a little bit earlier as well, and a little bit since. PewDiePie, he had this like kind of like untouchable position, like status, like he's just the biggest that there is, and he just seemed to be having so much fun with it, which was inspiring and kind of life affirming. He had this real benevolence to him. He was not going around with a chip on his shoulder, playing the victim. But also, he was not going to be pushed around. And like many people around 2016, PewDiePie was making fun of the sort of feminist social justice movement or the forces of that stuff. So a lot of people were speaking up about this sort of new type of feminism and basically calling things rape that have no proximity to rape, calling things sexist and racist that had nothing to do with the above. So PewDiePie, definitely when it came to feminism, he was poking fun at some of the feminists out there. And it was, I mean, there was a whole like kind of industry on YouTube around kind of poking fun at the feminists because of the way the feminists were kind of bringing it upon themselves with some of their newfound definitions of sexism. And similar with racism, these like newfound definitions of what it means to be racist. Basically, being white means you're racist, they were saying, and they still do, right? So if that's the definition, then there's a lot to poke fun of there, because if you're racist because of the color of your skin, then obviously there's the irony there is palpable. So guys like PewDiePie, he was having a blast just kind of poking fun at the forces of political correctness and third wave feminism and social justice and all of that. But as time passed, I think he kind of learned what a lot of people in his sort of anti-social justice movement were learning, which is, first of all, is this a hill you want to die on? Like, you like being edgy and challenging political correctness? Is this a hill you want to die on? What are you willing to sacrifice for this? And people were learning, first of all, you're going to get demonetized a lot of the time. Like, you're going to lose a lot of your livelihood. And that alone was enough to make a lot of people just kind of shrug and say, okay, well, I'm out. Or furthermore, you're going to be labeled as hateful. You're going to be labeled as a Nazi, rightly or wrongly. That's going to be pinned to your brand. And again, is this a hill you want to die on? I mean, for some people, the answer is yes, but to a lot of people, the answer is like, no, I didn't really sign up for all of this. I signed up to entertain and to have fun. I didn't sign up to, to die on the hill of fighting political correctness and new wave feminism or whatever you call this social justice shenanigan. But kind of a little bit deeper on a philosophical level, a popular thing anti-social justice people would say early on was everyone's an individual, right? Everyone's a person. Stop trying to put us all in a box and pit us against each other. We're not all part of a community. We're not all part of a group. Everyone's an individual, and they could, they got free will. They can make their own decisions, and stop trying to tell us all that we're either racist or being the victim of racism, right? Stop telling us all that we're all oppressors or oppressed. Everyone's an individual. Judge everyone individually, right? I mean, that's a common, good, positive message for people to say. But I mean, sooner or later, the anti-social justice people were being challenged in this way to a point where they just couldn't really push back, such as they were basically persuaded, a lot of them, that there really is a problem with racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia that you're not really aware of as someone who's not one of those marginalized groups. And to the extent that you're making fun of these efforts to combat oppression, you're part of the problem. And at a certain point, people just were starting to wonder, like, is it really as bad as they're saying? Maybe it really is as bad as they're saying. And I think the sort of climax of that was when the video of Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck was going around. I think there you just saw a lot of the formerly anti-social justice people. They had, at this point, they had really grown to despise President Trump, who was sort of like the figurehead of the anti-social justice, anti-political correctness scene. So they had grown to hate Trump. So they were kind of like over that whole thing. And now they're seeing this image of a cop just callously with a hand in his pocket, resting his knee on the neck of a black man. And a lot of people just said, you know what? Black Lives Matter were right all along. A lot of the same people that had challenged the BLM movement back, 5 years prior, this time around, they just said, let it burn. And as disheartening as it is to even remember what that felt like, I was living in Los Angeles and the fires and the vandalism were rampant. Very disheartening to see people apologizing for those riots. That is, basically sanctioning them or downplaying their severity. But generally, a lot of people, they were kind of saying, you know what, maybe we should have just stayed out of this whole culture war. And because, clearly racism is systematic. So that's one way that a lot of the anti-social justice people ended up just kind of backing off. They ended up being kind of persuaded that, the left or the social justice warriors, they were onto something all along. But another way that the anti-social justice people were challenged to the point of buckling is that they were kind of persuaded by elements of the fringe right that, maybe identity politics is more valuable than you're giving it credit for. Like, yeah, everyone's a person, but everyone has their in-group. And it seems like everybody except for white guys have their community, right? Like everyone else seems to be cashing in. Everyone else is part of a lobby. So why should we be missing out on all that? Why should not really we're the ones being oppressed by not playing this game? And you started to see a lot of the anti-social justice people actually turn into what they were accused of being in the first place, which is not necessarily Nazis, but people who are not shunned by Nazis, people who don't mind cooperating with the freakiest of, racist people on the right. So those are kind of like the two extreme fates of the people that were anti-social justice. A lot of them they joined the social justice effort, or they became kind of they became what they were accused of being. They became actual white nationalists or something equally freaky. But the guys like PewDiePie, returning back to him, he just ended up just kind of backing away from the whole thing. At a certain point, he realized, he saw the Charlottesville marches, people were holding up swastikas, and he made a video saying, you know what, maybe my Nazi jokes were not as funny as I thought, or maybe it's time to just put that joke to rest. So he moved on. He kind of put that all behind him, because like I said, not everyone needs to die on this hill, right? Not everyone's like this free speech and comedy extremist. Guys like PewDiePie didn't necessarily sign up for that, and he was just kind of ready to put that all behind. So generally, guys like him, they just kind of like backed away from the whole thing, and they just said, you know what, this is not my calling in life. So let's look at Elon Musk. I mean, similarly, he's kind of doing this anti-social justice thing now that a lot of people have been doing. So basically, I think like the adults have arrived to this party, like the kids, you know, PewDiePie, guys like PewDiePie and some of us, some of you watching and me, like we were kind of aware of this, so much more aware of it some years in the past, but a lot of people weren't really paying attention to this culture war. Now it's basically everywhere. The word woke is mainstream now. Like everyone knows it. Everyone has heard of critical race theory, whether or not they know what that is. Everyone has heard of, you know, whatever, the left this or the left that. And Elon Musk is kind of, he's kind of like the figurehead of this kind of new trend, this kind of new generation, so to speak, this new class of anti-social justice people. And he's having a lot of fun with it. He thinks, yeah, the left is nothing to be afraid of. Let's poke them. Let's make fun of them. I mean, he's in such a position of high status, right? But philosophically, you got to look at what took place with the anti-social justice people. Like I said early on, they were saying, yeah, everyone's an individual, they said. But at a certain point, if you don't have a philosophy for individualism to rest on, if you don't have a philosophy like objectivism, which the namesake of this channel offers, Ayn Rand, at a certain point, you're living with mixed premises. I mean, I'm not aware of another philosophy other than objectivism that really upholds individualism through and through. It's possible that there is one, but the only one I know of is objectivism, because it kind of like points out contradictions in other philosophies in a number of ways, which I can't quite get into right now. But point being, if you don't have a philosophical, like an integrated philosophy that embraces individualism on every level, you know, epistemology, like it upholds reason. Like if you don't have a philosophy that says you, the individual, can accurately look at reality and judge for yourself. If you don't have a philosophy that says you, the individual, can and ought to live selfishly in a rationally selfish way for your own sake, and that you are an end in yourself. If you don't have a philosophy that says that, if you don't have a philosophy that says you have rights that are inalienable, your individual rights are sacrosanct, if I pronounce that right, and that the purpose of government is to protect those rights, and that not even this much of your individual rights should ever be violated. If you don't have a philosophy that says all of those things, at a certain point, you're going to be, your contradictions are going to be exploited. And you're going to be kind of confronted with these contradictions, which is kind of, like I said, kind of what we saw with guys like PewDiePie and a lot of the anti-social justice kids. At a certain point, they're like, yeah, I can't really answer some of these questions that are being hurled upon me. And some of these accusations, I'm not really sure how to respond to. At a certain point, they just kind of check out. So Elon Musk, he's kind of implicitly pushing individualism. He's kind of like saying, you know, don't tell me I'm racist and sexist and don't silence our free speech and all of that. But at a certain point, he's going to be confronted with some questions that are going to be tough for him to answer if he's not already. So let's say he entirely acquires Twitter. And we've spoken in the past about some of the financial or commercial challenges to having a perfect free speech website on Twitter. Commercially, I think Elon is going to be faced with some serious boycotting, some serious, you know, advertising or funding problems. I mean, I can definitely see that becoming an issue. But just on a kind of an ethical level, he's going to face some serious questions. People are going to say, are you letting these, you know, pro-pedophilia people speak on your platform? Are you going to let that? Or you're letting, you know, if you're not going to ban anyone, and then you start to see every trending topic is, you know, Charlottesville slogans, you know, Jews will not replace us. When the alt-right or the white nationalists and all these people they're making ground, they're making headway, they're growing, and they're reaching a lot of people on your website, Twitter. Are you choosing to give them a platform? Are you so confident that, you know, the open exchange of ideas is going to go the way that you think it will? And he's going to have some tough questions to answer, in addition to all of the commercial concerns. That's, you know, that's kind of one of the things that he's going to face. And in terms of, what Elon is not really aware of right now. So like, I don't think he realizes just how good the left, the what do you call them, the woke left, how skilled they are at exploiting people's contradictions, at basically finding their guilt and exploiting it, which is kind of what they do with guys like PewDiePie and make him back away in fear. But so not only is Elon, similarly as PewDiePie, not aware of kind of who he's messing with, but also he's not really aware of like who he's aligning himself with. I don't think he quite understands kind of what's happening among Republicans in recent times, or maybe he's sort of aware but doesn't kind of see the significance. So what the Republicans have become is a party where anti-constitutionalists, anti-individualists feel right at home. And populism is where all the energy is, all of the enthusiasm. And how this is going to pan out, I'm not quite sure. But is Elon sure this is something he wants to be a part of? Is he aware of what he's going to be a part of? He voiced his support for Ron DeSantis. Are you sure you like what DeSantis did with Disney, Elon? Are you sure that that's aligned with your values as somebody who who supports and appreciates the gay community and all of that? Like, are you quite aware also as someone who's sort of a businessman? Do you like the way that DeSantis interacted with Disney? So, and that's the sort of tame aspect of what's going on with Republicans. What's going to happen, Elon, if you start to be influenced by elements of the right who are really, really focused on demographics, and you see a little bit of tweets from Elon recently talking about birth rates and stuff like that, which is not in itself a taboo topic, talking about birth rates, but it can often lead to other issues. I mean, you look at another one of these anti-social justice guys from the past who backed away from the whole thing, a YouTuber named JonTron. He thought like, oh, this anti-political correctness thing is so fun. Yeah, he said the white people are not having enough babies and our Western values are going to be, eliminated within a couple generations. And then, as you can imagine, he got hit with a lot of criticism, and he backed away from the whole thing. He said, you know what? I'm just here to entertain. Similarly, if Elon Musk starts hanging out with Republicans and hearing some of their charismatic speakers, and then he starts tweeting out, yeah, our Western values really are under pressure, under threat if we don't have more Western babies. And again, he doesn't quite understand necessarily who he's aligning himself with and what he's getting into. Now, here again, philosophy is kind of what we need. We need a philosophy that identifies what actually are Western values. Is it about certain families having enough babies, or is it more of a universal thing, the universalism of the Enlightenment, which the conservatives have recently explicitly rejected? The universalism, once you see that, like the universalism that you see implicitly in a place like Silicon Valley, that you see in Elon Musk's various successful companies, the people from all over the world pursuing happiness, pursuing success, pursuing their own career selfishly and rationally. That's Western values. Those are Western values, and that's not going away. Well, it could be going away, I guess, because I could see somebody saying, yeah, but those Silicon Valley people are not having enough babies, whereas let's say people from third world countries are moving to Western countries and having babies, whatever, and they're bringing, let's say, socialist ideas with them. Or, well, socialism's a sketchy one because a lot of people are pro-socialism all over the place. But they would say, they're let's say Muslims flooding in are going to breed faster, and you're going to see Western values, Enlightenment values go away. They might answer. But again, it's like if you truly have a philosophical grasp of Western values, of the Enlightenment values, you truly understand them. And again, you can see a philosophy like objectivism being paramount in doing so. Then you're able to properly defend Enlightenment values, individualism. You're able to easily then confront the left or the freaky right. You're able to embrace liberty. You're able to promote liberty without being afraid of which forces are going to exploit this liberty in order to promote tyranny, which is kind of what you hear from conservatives recently. They say, look, we gave liberty a chance and the left used it to promote tyranny. They say, you know, big tech, this, and education, and like in all these various ways, the left are using liberty against us. And so maybe liberty is not all it's cracked up to be. So again, like Elon Musk, I'm not sure he's aware of this whole jungle he's stepping into. And it's quite possible that within a certain amount of time, Elon Musk will just kind of like take a deep breath and say, you know what, I bit off more than I can chew. And he'll just kind of back away from this whole thing, just like PewDiePie did. And he'll get right back to what he enjoys and what he's good at. In PewDiePie's case, it was, you know, making entertaining content. And in Elon Musk's case, it's, you know, going to Mars and building a really cool, fast car and whatever else he chooses to do as a businessman. All right, time for your super chats. And I'm going to take a sip of my wonderful Western cappuccino. Marilyn, thank you for the $2. Free trade with 20 secs. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I think that's Swedish. Good to see we're reaching the Swedes. Here in America, we've heard wonderful things about you and all of your beauty. Jonathan with $2.99, thank you. Bonnie with $2 says he's winging it, so it could go either way. Yeah, I mean, we can't quite predict what's going to happen, but we know kind of what his options are, right? Like we've kind of seen this play out over and over again. So at a certain point, you can sort of make predictions, and you could be wrong. But like I said around 2017, I told Dave Rubin and Sargon of Akkad and various others, I said within a few years, you're all just going to be Republicans, but probably not the religious type, more just like the secular nationalist type. And turns out I was right, but even worse than I thought. Like they're both nationalist and religious. It's definitely the worst of all worlds, what's happening among Republicans recently. And so, I mean, you can predict. I mean, this is why philosophy is so important. So I know people like me, we sound like, I don't know what we sound like when I say like, it's objectivism or you're fucked. Excuse my language. I know it's not a very persuasive thing to say, but I mean, philosophy matters. And if you don't have a philosophy that upholds individualism with a good epistemology, a good view of politics and all of that, a good ethics, sooner or later you start to see why tyranny kept winning, why altruism and collectivism kept on overtaking, like why good periods of history kept on falling down and getting swallowed by bad philosophies. So it's like at a certain point, it's like you do need a good philosophy, or you really are effed. Marilyn with $2 says, do you think Elon Musk is principled? I mean, yeah, I think he is. But the question is, which principles does he really care about? So at a certain point, the way he's challenging the left, at a certain point, he's going to kind of need to ask himself, am I sure I disagree with the left this much? And is this how I want to spend my life? Like, does this matter to me more than everything I've built in my life and all my other values? So at a certain point, it's like, maybe his principle is not necessarily in fighting the left. Maybe his deepest principles are basically promoting, pluralism, whatever, tolerance. Maybe he'll end up deciding, like many people did, you know what, really, gays and blacks and trans and women really are as oppressed as the left said, and we should all really do our part. And that's one thing he might say. Another, or he might go off the deep end on the opposite side, or most likely, as my prediction is, he'll back away from the whole thing and he'll say, I bit off more than I can chew. And my principle really is running my business and being a good person. Roland with 199 says, here's for universalism. On that, I will raise my cappuccino. Thank you for joining us today. Bonnie with the 149. Thank you for that super chat. Really nice to get some super chats. Thank you for your support. And please make sure you leave a like on this video, or I will personally make sure Elon Musk bans all of you from Twitter. See, I gotta go with fear. Gotta go with threats. I'm joking, of course. Daniel, I don't know why I'm saying that. Producer tells me no upcoming shows today, which is the exception that proves the rule. Most daily objectives end with a long list of announcements. So my point being here, this network brings you a lot of wonderful content, more than you probably even have time to consume. So might want to think of becoming a member just because you support this network. And furthermore, because there's even more content behind the paywall, and even more important, because you don't want the left to win. Thank you for joining us today. This was a wonderful little discussion, my favorite type of discussion, where I do the talking and you do the listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Daily Objective. It's going to be me and Nikos Sotirakopoulos. I believe. I could be wrong. Don't hold me, but I think that's what's up. All right. See you all tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.